How's everybody doing? In today's video, I'm going to quickly discuss the difference between a Floyd Rose and an Ibanez locking tremolo system. So I've done a couple of videos a while back on the actual Floyd Rose or Floyd Rose licensed, 1000 series tremolos, things like that. They're all basically the same design in terms of like size and shape, roughly, and they all have the same function, which is to allow you to pull additional tension on the strings back to increase the pitch and also dive forward to decrease the pitch and then come back to center at your neutral tension, which in theory is kind of how all tremolo systems work, although something besides a Floyd, like the tremolo on a Strat, for instance, can typically, depending on how you set it up, mostly just dive, and it can't really dive very far, whereas with a Floyd system, and as you're about to see with the Ibanez system, there are huge cutouts in the body, and the way that the tremolo is mounted allows it pretty much full freedom to tip either direction and allow you to do all kinds of weird noises and crazy tricks and pitch bending things using the tremolo. So just like with the Floyd Rose, on the back of the Ibanez you have a trem cutout. You can see the springs, which goes from the trem block into the body. So the place where your bridge is actually connected to the body is actually way up in here, and then it goes through the springs to the pivot point, and then the pivot point is of course the block and the bridge itself, which is basically just mounted on these two posts here, and it can tip back and forth on the springs, and it will give you your variation in pitch. So as you can tell, that is exactly the same principle as what a Floyd Rose would use. So fundamentally, they function exactly the same. So if you're trying to find a guitar that has a Floyd Rose and you're also looking at Ibanez, but you're not sure if an Ibanez locking trem is going to have the same sort of functionality, they typically do have exactly the same functionality. Now that being said, there are several different versions and styles of the Ibanez floating system, that's the locking floating system. So in the instance of this, which is a Gem Junior, it has what's just considered, I think, the standard Ibanez double locking trem system, but there's several different kinds. I had a Joe Satriani guitar where it had the exact same type of functionality, but the arrangement of where the strings anchored and where the fine tuners were was just slightly different, but it still performed exactly the same way. And I know there's different versions. This is kind of a low tier version because this is like a cheaper Ibanez. But they all function the same way. When they're an Ibanez double locking trem system, they're going to allow you to pull, to dive, and do all those sounds that you are looking for. And actually, because it's their own in-house proprietary thing, it allows them to have this system on this guitar, and it really adds hardly any cost to the guitar in terms of the final price. So it's a really good feature to have as compared to a 1000 series Floyd Rose, even, which would add a bit of cost to a guitar. So as you can see here, it's very sensitive. You don't even really need the bar. You could just you could just sort of play around with it like that. You can basically play around with it, pull the tension higher, dive the tension lower. One more thing, at least on this design, the whammy bar itself just is a tension attachment, so you can basically tighten this thing down by hand and make it stiffer where it'll stay in position, and then you can loosen it a bit and make it more floppy where it'll fall by gravity, and it's still pretty well secured. So it has that type of adjustment like a Floyd Rose would have, just for your own preference of whammy bar feel. I usually like to leave it fairly tight and about like that until I need it, so it's out of the way. But there you go. Hopefully this video explained some of the differences, or the fact that there is basically no functional difference between a Floyd Rose and an Ibanez double locking trem. So if you're in the market for one, you could be satisfied with the functionality of the other. If you like this video, don't forget to share it and subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see you guys next time.